So now let's talk about how we can use Power BI to retrieve, or sometimes it's called scrape, data from different websites. Power BI turns out to be a very useful tool for this type of work because it has some built-in functionalities and structures that can quickly detect the data structure in a website and get the data quickly, automatically. Okay. Uh, but keep in mind nowadays, some some websites with kind of sensitive data, they do not want you to get their data in a large scale automatically. Okay, so they have built their own defense against data scrapers. Okay, so whether you are using Power BI or other kind of tools to try to retrieve large scale data from, for example, Amazon or LinkedIn, you usually will have some difficult time getting their data. Okay, they just have their own engineers who set up the defense against kind of large scale data scraping from their websites. But for most other websites, I think you can easily use Power BI to retrieve a large amount of data that helps with your whatever study, research, okay, or personal hobbies. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to walk you through some examples to how to show you how to do this. Okay, though. So first thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to open a new web page. I'm going to search for box office data. Okay, so there's a box office module data set which I find kind of interesting. Okay, they have domestic and international and worldwide box office information in terms of daily, weekend, weekly, all right, monthly. All right, you can easily find interesting information there. Okay, so for example, I want to retrieve weekly domestic box office data starting from year 2026, maybe back 5 years to year 2021, for example. Okay, so how can I do that? Well, you can easily just retrieve this data here on this web page, as we have learned previously. You can just use this URL and paste into Power BI, and Power BI will figure out a way to retrieve the relevant data tables from this web page. Um, so I'm gonna just copy this URL, and as we learned before, we can just open a Power BI desktop blank page, and we start from there. Okay, blank report. Then we'll just get, you can either go to get data here or you can go to file, but anyways, I'm gonna go get data web, and I'm going to paste this URL there. Okay, URL, you can paste it there, and then you can go next, and Power BI is gonna try to figure out the relevant information on that website. Okay, so table one, table two. I think table two is the relevant information. You have different dates corresponding to different weeks. You have the top 10 growth, the change from week to week, overall growth, and the number one release, things like that. Okay, I think that's exactly the same information we got here. Okay, top 10 growth, overall growth, right? Number one release. Okay, so that seems to be the data we wanted. So I'll just check on table two. And here, again, in the newer version of Power BI, there's no more standalone transform data button here. You have to go to here, the drop down list, and check transform data. And it's going to open up the query editor, and you are going to get the data pulled up in this table. Okay, so that's the That's basically the weekly box office 2026. Okay, that's why I renamed this table to be more informative. So how about we want to retrieve other years? Okay, we got 2026, no problem. How about 2025? Okay, you can get 2025, of course, here. And actually, there's just all the way back to year 1977. So you can retrieve each year. Okay, but do you want to, for example, why get the 2026? Why come to 2025? Do you think I should just copy this URL and do that process again? Okay. Well, of course you can do that, but that's doesn't sound very automatic, right? That sounds very efficient. So I will show you a way to, for example, retrieve a bunch of years box office data at once instead of come back and copy and pasting for each year. Okay, I'm going to kind of design a workflow, and you can work on different years just in one try. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Um, there's something you need to notice. Okay, when we first come to this. Okay, so when we first come to the domestic weekly here, let's actually close this. Let's start from scratch. Okay, I'm gonna click on this website. So when you first come here and you go to domestic weekly, so the first landing page you're at is gonna be related to the current year. Okay, at this point we're in 2026. Okay, if you watch this video later on, well, it's probably kind of a different year. But anyways, here we are in year 2026. Okay, and if you look at this URL, there's no indication of the current year. Okay, however, if you change this, for example, I want to go to year 2025, then you take a look at the URL. Okay, so there's a by year 2025. Okay, if I go to year 2024, again here becomes by year 2024. So in the URL there's actually a element that indicates the specific year, okay, contained in the current web page. All right, so when I say automation, you are trying to kind of take advantage of those key parameters to put them into a kind of automated process, and you can retrieve data for different years all at once. Okay. So now if you go back, for example, once I checked year 2024, 2023, okay, they all have this year elements embedded in the URL. So that seems to be something I can use to make this process a automated workflow. Okay. So now if I go back to 2026, you see here we also have year 2026 here. Again, although when we first get to this website, the first landing page we get to, usually they will not show this year. Okay, I think the original, let me again go here. All right, when we first landed here and we go to weekly, you see this URL. There's no indication of the year. Okay. However, when I played around, okay, when I played around different years, I checked different years, and then I come back to 2026. This key elements actually shows up. This year parameter actually becomes apparent as part of the URL. So that's something I'm going to use to help the automation process. Okay.